Yeah, big topic. Obviously, the reason why I wanted to talk to you to get your legendary insight perspective on what we saw last Saturday. I saw an IG post that you did. You actually had picked Errol Spence
Yeah.
to win the fight. Now
No,
that it's passed, now that we saw how the fight played out, what are the things that stuck out to you the most?
well, again, I did a post-fight Instagram also because I was wrong, completely, totally wrong. I picked Errol Spence, and Marcos, I started thinking about it. Why? Look, neither one has been that active, but Crawford has been more active. Errol was almost 2 years since he fought, right? Or maybe it's 2 years. I don't. So I think Ugas was his last fight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Um, what did I tell you? Fighters got to fight. Fighters have to fight, and you can't take off 2 years and go into a big fight like this. That's tough. That's very tough. I admire the fact you think you could do it, but it's very tough. If you look at the great fights before, Hearns, Hagler, all the great fights we're talking about, them guys have been fighting regularly. They both were on a card, 3 months before that, and they both won, and they announced the fight in September of 1981. So that's how it was back then. Nowadays, to try to get the two big fights, to try to get fighters to commit, takes forever, and when they do, they fought forever. So, the buildup was big. Because we finally got it. They finally put two guys, put their names on the line, on the contract. Maybe I was a little wishful thinking. I was hoping, I know Bud Crawford, special fighter. He's been fighting regularly, special fighter. I think Errol's a special fighter, and I thought maybe we're going to get to Errol before car accident, so to speak. But you know what? I thought about afterwards. That was just wishful thinking. Obviously, look, first of all, let me just go. Bud Crawford looks spectacular. Generational fighter. There's no dispute. So I'm not taking away anything. He did everything he was supposed to do. He dismantled Errol Spence. He absolutely obliterated him in this fight. Errol wasn't in this fight at all. Maybe round one. Maybe everyone, I think, give Errol the first round. I think everyone's said they'd give it. After that, after he got dropped, he looked very amateurish. His punches had no snap. They had nothing behind him. He started looping his shots. And a guy like Errol, Bud Crawford picked it off in a minute, counter you, which is exactly what he did. He didn't have to initiate too much. Just stayed in front of Errol. And when Errol, looping shots, or like I said, he would come in, he was coming, it was no head movement. He was coming in a straight line. Bud Crawford just countered him. It was made to order for him. So I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, the game plan. I don't know if making weight hurt him or not. I don't know, because I'm not saying he looked drained. I don't know if he had a problem making weight, but he absolutely did nothing in that fight. After that first round, which was the technical round, and probably give it to Errol. After that, Bud Crawford absolutely dismantled him. And as the fight was going on, Errol was pushing his punches. There was no snap to his punches. There was no rhythm. When a guy starts spreading his feet wider, it's like he's trying to base out to get power, but there's nothing behind his punches. Bud Crawford picked everything off and countered him. I mean, it's just, he looked so amateurish, man. And I hate to say it like that, but he did. He was not in that fight at all. And, to talk about doing it, they had a clause you could activate it for fight number 2. And I guess that sounded good before the fact. But after the fact, I don't see anything different happening. I mean, here's the thing. I think, when they were talking about it happening 2019, 2020, I'm saying, what was the buildup? I think it would have happened probably before COVID. Or, if COVID didn't happen 2020, we all worked for Fox at that time, right? And I think they were talking about the buildup, and it was going to finally come to fruition. Then COVID happened, so it pushed everything back. I think by delaying the fight, two things happened. I think, again, inactivity hurt Spence Well, then he got, I'm sorry, then he got in a car accident. That was what pushed it back, right? It's a car accident. I don't know how anybody comes through that car accident, it comes through like that, and it comes back to being what he was. I mean, if we've seen that accident, the tape of it, and I don't even know how he's alive, but, they come back. So he had 2 fights after, and he looked good, but they're not Bud Crawford. And 2, I think the biggest thing is it let Bud Crawford grow into his body. He's got full-fledged welterweight now. And before he was, 140, 135, 140, moving up. Errol looked like the stronger guy. And now, before the fight, I thought Errol's too big, too strong, put under pressure. Everything that happened, but it was Bud Crawford doing it. Bud Crawford was too big. He was too strong. He applied the pressure, and it was Errol who couldn't handle it. So I think by delaying the fight, it helped Bud Crawford in two ways. One, Errol was inactive. Bud Crawford was more active. Not a whole lot more, but he was more active. 2, he grew into his body. And, man, he had that man strength. Oof. He just looked too big and too strong for Errol. And like I said, Errol looked like he was pushing his punches. He had no rhythm. I never seen him look so bad. And I don't think it's going to make a difference in fight number 2. In fact, I think it might be easier for Errol. For Bud Crawford the second time.
Yeah, the rematch, I would imagine, is going to take place at 154. Because it's 154, and if Errol takes a good amount of time to heal up, get better from this fight, give his body a chance to rest, he doesn't have to cut down as much. You said you don't think it looks any different?
No, because I think mentally, Bud Crawford has him now. Mentally, Bud Crawford won, because it wasn't a close fight. It wasn't nothing that give and take or no. He walked through him. He destroyed him. He dismantled him. He obliterated him. Every adjective you want to use. So what's going to be different? Errol's also going to get smarter. He's going to get better. No, you know what the difference between 147 and 154 is? 2 glasses of water. Now, if you have a hard time making 47, those 2 glasses of water mean everything. But that doesn't mean it's going to change how you look in a fight as much, so much. I mean, he had nothing for Bud Crawford. There's no game plan. And that's the other thing. You got the fighter of the year, and Derek James, the manager, trainer of the year. I didn't hear it because, I had friends over and we were watching, and I'm sure he's giving him some, direction, but obviously none of it worked, or he didn't listen because he was doing the same thing over round after round after round. And his guy was walking into everything. He couldn't get away with a punch. And when he got dropped that second round, which was a flat, not a flash knockdown, but he got that, boom right in, that stiff jab, knocked him behind. He got up. I think the fight was over from then, right that point on. I think he knew he didn't have it. I think Bud Crawford's confidence just grew by leaps and bounds. And after that, he started walking through him. He walked Errol down, and every punch he threw, he caught and he countered. Errol had nothing for him. So, and his face started blowing up. I mean, I never saw Errol get his face blow up like that, get busted up like that. And so, it's a different feeling when you get busted up and start tasting your own blood and things like that. So it's a different mindset. So I don't see anything different that Errol could do against Bud Crawford. I really don't.
When you look at the pantheon of the greats of the sport, and for those of you watching, Ray's like a historian, man. The talks I would have with you, Boom Boom, about fighters, and you bring up fighters from the 50s, and I'd be like, what who's that? And you would tell me, where would you rank Bud? How special is he?
At this point, he's a special fighter. That's why I said in the post-fight Instagram, he solidified himself as one of the all-time greats. Now, that in itself is a hell of a thing to acquire. But you're one of the all-time greats. Your name will be spoken about. But it's his first fight, or a couple of fights. A second or third fight at 47. He's moved up, through the years. I'm sure he had over the weight matches, but at 47, right? So we don't know yet, but I don't see anybody beating him in 47. And we're talking about Bruce Ennis. I don't know if that's probably a good fight. it'll be better than what he just had. But I don't see Bucenas beating him at this point. So, so when you talk about all-time greats at 147, you can't talk about it yet because he just had that one fight there, or one title fight, I should say. So let's see what happens after a while. But let's put it this way. When you talk about certain guys that are generational fighters, how they would compare against other fighters, I'm not saying he'd beat Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Roberto Duran, Wilfredo Benitez, etc. But let me tell you this: he could fight with each. He would be able to fight with each one. He'd be in each fight. He wouldn't get blown out by no means. I think it's funny. Talking to people, I said Tommy Hearns' name would be interesting, but I think the most difficult. It'd be a headache for Ray Leonard. He'd be a headache for Roberto Duran because of his height and his reach. I'm not saying he beat them. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying he'd be a headache for them. Tommy and him would be an interesting fight. Benitez and him, it'd be interesting, but except that Bud's a little more offensive than Benitez was. Both great defensive fighters. So you talk about those are the four kings for me at that weight. They always talk about Marvin being one of the four kings, but that Marvin is a middleweight. I'm talking about the welterweight division. Look, they talk about him and Floyd fighting. I'm gonna tell you what, he'd have been a headache for Floyd. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe I'm wrong. Did you know better than me? Did they spar when Bud first turned pro and Floyd was fighting? Did they spar because they're both with Top Rank? And I don't know. I thought I heard they sparred. I'm not saying.
I would have to dig on that. From what I know, no. I know Errol sparred with Floyd. He was one of his sparring to prepare for Manny, but Terence, I'm not sure.
Okay, but sparring, first of all, sparring's exactly what is a sparring match. A lot of guys look good in the gym. Get certain guys in the gym. It doesn't mean it's going to work out in the fight. I wasn't a good gym fighter, so a lot of guys look great against me in the gym. But I what I'm saying though, but I think at this point, him and Floyd, hey, he'd be a headache for anybody. Bud Crawford be a headache for anybody through any decade. Look, Carmen Basilio beat Sugar Ray Robinson, but was Carmen Basilio beat Bud Crawford? Who knows? Ray Robinson was considered by many to be the greatest, not only the greatest middleweight, but the greatest welterweight of all time. Who knows? Bud Crawford's one of them type of guys, man, because of what he could do left and right. And his boxing IQ is so high, he's going to be a headache for anybody. I'm not saying he'd beat him, but he'd be in every one of those fights. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that reflects. I remember Bob Arum mentioned that Bud could hang in with any one of those guys. And he said this years and years ago. I want to say back in like 2016, 2017. And at that time, people were like, oh, yeah, sure, Bob. Well, yeah, you're just promoting your guy. But as time has progressed, that statement is so true. And he showed up when he needed to show up on Saturday. That's for sure. That was a special performance.
What it was. It was a thorough ass whipping. It was a thorough ass whipping of Errol Spence. I mean, there's no other way you could say it. He didn't just beat him. He beat his ass. He whipped his ass. Hey, you know what? And I'm sure Errol will be the first to admit that. I'm sure Errol will say, "Yeah, I got my ass whipped, and I got my ass whipped, but I'm gonna be better the second time, whatever." You know what I mean? But you can't sugarcoat that. And I admire the fact that Errol hasn't come out and made any excuses, right? He just says, "Yeah, he lost." And, I haven't heard anything. Let's put it that way. I don't think Errol is that type of guy to make excuses anyway. He just got thoroughly beat. He took a thorough ass whipping. So, but maybe it'll be, maybe he's hoping it'll be different the second time. It's happened. Look, there's other fights when there's guys fought 3 or 4 times. Back in the day, Ezra Charles fought Joe Walcott. They fought 4 times, right? Ezra Charles' decision the first 2 times, and Joe Walcott knocked him out the third fight. So I mean, it happens. When guys fight each other a couple of times. I just don't see it happening in this fight, in this manner, because Bud Crawford is at the top of his game. He lives a Spartan life. He's good for the community in Omaha. But here's the other thing too. I've said this, and I was going to go on go another Instagram and make this comment, that I've said this repeatedly, that I've said every fighter through the generations, every fighter has gone away for training camp. Every fighter goes away, from Joe Louis in the 30s and Ray Robinson and Carmen Rocky Marciano, blah, 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 all of them. I used to train at Grossinger's. I went away, train at Grossinger's, the same place, same gym, same ring that Rocky Marciano used to use, and hundreds of other fighters that trained through the years, right? Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali used to go to Deer Lake, So everybody goes away. Now, Errol stayed in, correct me if I'm wrong, he stayed in Dallas, right? I guess he has his home gym in Dallas. It's worked for him 30 years. I got it. It worked for him. But at some point, it don't work for you. And when it don't in a big way. I've said this repeatedly. I've had trainers I'm friends with whose fighters have stayed home and trained, and I tell them it don't work. It worked for a while, but when it won't in a big way. It's just, there's something about going away to get that edge. You're doing it mentally. You say, I'm paying the dues. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm going away. I'm leaving my family behind. I'm sacrificing my family life, my social life, everything for this fight. When guys go home, they can say, look, I'm not going out, but they're with their family. They're seeing their family on a regular basis. They're sleeping in their bed. There's something about that. I'm not saying it makes you soft, but it doesn't give you the edge that you need. When you go away, there's a certain edge that you gain from from being away from everyone. So because you immerse yourself into the culture of the fight, totally being away. What did he do? He went up to Colorado Springs, 7,000 feet above sea level. Boom, love that. I used to go to elevation too all the time. When I fought on the East Coast, I go to the Catskill Mountains. When he fought out west, I trained in Tahoe. I trained in Reno. I trained in Arizona. Tucson, to get acclimated. I trained in Vegas for the acclimation because it's the high altitude. So these are the things you want to do to show that you're doing everything you're supposed to do to win this fight. And I've said it repeatedly through the years, man. When guys stay at home, just something about it, man. It takes that edge off. I'm not saying you go soft, but when you're around your family, it's hard to get that edge because you're with them, you're seeing them, instead of missing them. You want to miss your family. You want to miss your friends. You want to miss the comforts. You got to. You hear the saying. You got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's a big key of success for me. So, I think that a lot. I'm not saying who knows. They're saying, well, they're both in their 30s. They've been through it all. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but no, man. There's something about and Bud Crawford did it the correct way. He left his family and friends, his city, and went to up in the high altitude, away from everybody, and being uncomfortable, man. And that's something to be said for that. There's something about being uncomfortable. You want to be uncomfortable because it gives you that comfort in the fight.